And joining him, may I please invite Shri Anuj Ranjan, General Manager, Fintech Department, Reserve Bank of India, and Mr. Rajesh Chopra, Senior Vice President, MasterCard. Well, we've got all our three speakers here. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're all also absolutely inquisitive about this changing consumer behavior, can we have a round of applause to welcome all of our speakers here? Time to gather some more insights. A very, very riveting topic coming your way. With that, I'd like to hand it over to Ram. Over to you then.
Hello. Am I audible? Good afternoon, everyone. A warm welcome to you all to this panel. My name is Ram Rakapan, and I'm Head of Government Engagement for Visa for India and South Asia. I'll be moderating this panel today. The topic we are going to discuss today is the changing consumer behavior driving the digital payment evolution. In fact, this is a topic everyone is interested, be it the payment companies, technology companies, regulators, and even the government. Indians are adopting digital payments at a scorching pace. We have risen to the top of the chart in terms of the number of transactions. But do we really understand the changing consumer preferences for how they shop, how they pay, bank, or otherwise engage brands? What does this mean for the merchants, banks, and other payment businesses that serve them? What it means for the regulator? You may probably be aware that the additional factor of authentication through a PIN or a OTP is the chief reason boosting customer confidence, leading to more rapid digital adoption. However, do we know that the fraud in digital payment is on the rise? Do regulators and businesses are protecting consumers from falling victim? Finally, we see a rapid emergence of over half a dozen unicorns in the Indian fintech sector, offering services ranging from payments to cards and multiple payment options. However, do we know what are some of the ways that payment technology and innovation are helping support a more frictionless consumer experience? So these are some of the topics that I'll be discussing with the esteemed panelists today. Let me quickly introduce our panelists. Mr. Anuj Ranjan, who is currently General Manager at the newly created Fintech Department at RBI. He is presently overseeing some of the exciting work at RBI related to Fintech, central bank digital currency, regulatory sandbox, and the innovation hub. A fact that probably not many are aware is that winning gold has been his forte. He has been a gold medalist throughout his academics, and even won the Best Employee of the Year award in RBI. Interestingly, he is also a leadership coach. So, sir, thank you so much for accepting and joining us in this discussion today.
My pleasure.
I'm pleased to introduce and welcome Mr. Rajesh Chopra from MasterCard. Rajesh heads the data and services at MasterCard Advisor. He's also a Senior Vice President. He has a wealth of knowledge and distilled experience from hundreds of real-world engagements from banks by helping them with data insights and analytics. Thank you, Rajesh, for joining us today. In the course of next 40 minutes or so we have together, I hope we can amplify some of the questions that I had highlighted earlier. So without further ado, let me first turn to Mr. Anuj for the question. Sir, a recent survey on the topic revealed that consumers keep security at the top of their mind when decide what payment methods to use. I know you are a regulator, but as an individual, do you have any preference? What are the parameters under which you would select a particular digital payment method, or do you use digital payments at all?
Yeah. Thanks, Mr. Ram. Let us look at evolution, and we always kind of try to understand that whether the customer is driving, the behavior of the customer is driving the evolution in payment system, or the payment system is kind of onboarding customers in a large number, and therefore, so it's like a chicken and egg story. Which comes first is still a thing which we can ponder over. But I feel there are certain aspects of digital payments where customers gave an indication, and as a regulator, we try to get on board some of the developments and evolution in the payment system. Sometimes, as a regulator, we felt that these are the need of the hour, and therefore, and when you touched upon the security aspect, let me tell you, as a regulator, Reserve Bank, for Reserve Bank, customer centricity is of paramount importance. So any initiative, any innovation which is happening, customer is at the center, and how to ensure that the trust, how to ensure that the security which a consumer is looking for in a digital payment is taken care of to the extent possible. There is no foolproof mechanism that everything which comes will be 100% foolproof, but before we kind of get into it goes into the system, it is kind of ensured that yes, security, customer protection, all they are taken care of. So the sum and substance is customer at the center, protection of customer is very important. And if customer feels that as a regulator, the ecosystem, payment ecosystem is safe, secure, the onboarding increases by leaps and bounds, and maybe COVID has exacerbated, and maybe I was reading somewhere, it has led to, it has leapfrogged for another 3 to 4 years, which we would have achieved in next 3-4 years. COVID, the pandemic has onboarded more customers into this. So again, the comfort, you took example of 2FA, second factor authentication, additional factor authentication. I think as the ecosystem got enlarged, more and more people started joining, the number of frauds also increased. So as a regulator, we found that yes, apart from password, is there a need to have another authentication method and the second factor. Now if you have seen the payment vision, even whether for international transactions, whether we can have second factor authentication, additional factor authentication. So again, if the trust is not there in the ecosystem, I think onboarding will be affected, and therefore we always look at creating trust, keeping customer a very important aspect, and we move forward.
I also asked a question about your individual preference. Some people say, for example, look to in digital payments for convenience, some for rewards, discounts, some for millennials, for example, they look for rewards and stuff. So as an individual preference, and not just as a regulator, what would be on top of your mind? The reason why I'm asking is, we wanted to do a survey with the participants today, just to get their customer preference, but we couldn't run that. But just wanted to get, at least from the panelists, what would be your preference and why?
I think convenience, speed, reduction in cost, I think these are the things which will attract more. The incidental, the cashbacks and the other things may attract, but I think the base, the foundation will be on how convenient it is, how easy it is to use, how it reduces the cost, and I think these will drive, and every individual feels that if the transactions is safe and secure, I think most of the people will go for it rather than look for a small cashback or some benefits here and there.
Okay. Rajesh, what's your views here? I understand MasterCard has commissioned a study or survey on consumer preferences recently. So is there anything that you would like to share, the results of the report, as well as your personal preference? Yeah.
Sure, thanks. Thanks, Ram, and thanks, Anuj sir, to start the discussion. So you're right. I think from a MasterCard survey standpoint or whatever index we came, I think 3 key elements came as an outcome. I think one was digital, payments are definitely on the rise, right? Customers are really embracing digital payments. Obviously, consumers are also going for convenience, as Anuj also said that convenience is a paramount. But then there is also a component of biometrics, right? Not everyone wants to remember passwords, right? Absolutely, 1-step, 2-step authentication process is there. But are there ways where I don't need to remember password, and this is where biometrics can help, right? You would be amazed to know that 93% of the individuals actually had at least one digital transaction. Now, if we go 3 years back, probably that was not the case. So, to Anuj's point, yes, pandemic has ensured that some of the things have really happened and driven because of the need. But then it's not a short-term phase that we had. It's not that when pandemic is now, on the verge, people will go back to their original choices. Some of those behaviors have really gone for long. So that's what I would say is a summary of some of the instances we have seen. Convenience, as far as security is there, is a key trend that we see. The number of e-commerce transactions are much larger. Even when people are spending at, POS, at the shop, they are adopting more contactless ways, right? It might have started from not touching, because of the pandemic, but then that has really ensured that at a particular threshold level, those contactless payments are really on the rise. That's much convenient also. So all these, in a nutshell, are really bringing a lot of evolution to our digital payments landscape. So if you talk about my personal preferences, I would say, yes, convenience is important. One of the key things, especially for small ticket, payments. But when it comes to event-based purchases, or let's say comparatively significant size tickets, rewards, loyalty points, cashbacks, and even some of the other things also excite me. So it's a combination. Some of the, like I said, everyday needs, small needs, convenience is paramount. But for big thing, we will, I'm sure many people in the audience will also like to compare a lot of things before they buy something, aspirational. And that's what I'll also prefer.
So the report that I was highlighting, was that a global report, or does it throw any light on India? Or the survey results, does it match with what Indian users are thinking, or is it the same? Is it security the top parameter?
Yeah,
Anything?
absolutely. So again, it's a global report, but pretty much I would say India and China are driving a lot of that, I would say data for that report. So absolutely in line with that, and security is, the top need. So you're absolutely right. I think Indian consumers are pretty much having a similar trend. It's a comparatively younger population, millennial population. So adaptation to some of these digital tools is much higher in India. So, even if we did, global index, it was very much relatable to Indian consumers, and a large component of that were people from here.
Thanks. Sir, there is a proverb that goes like this, that trust arrives at the back of a tortoise and leaves on the back of a galloping horse. Now, as a regulator, how is RBI trying to build customer trust and awareness when it comes to digital payments?
A lot of steps. In fact, it is very difficult to cover everything here. But if you look at the recent steps, as I told you about the second factor authentication, we conducted a hackathon where the theme, one of the problem statement was that, is there an alternative, as Mr. Rajesh referred to, biometrics? Is there an alternative to OTP so that the life becomes easy and people don't have to remember? And because a lot of frauds were happening, even people were getting the OTP hacked. So that is one approach where we allowed innovators to come and try, and then maybe wherever regulatory framework is required, definitely we with open mind will try to implement that. Setting up of Reserve Bank Innovation Hub, not only for the products which are regulated by Reserve Bank or under the regulatory perimeter of Reserve Bank, it is for the entire financial sector. So somebody who is looking at insurance sector innovation or capital market innovation can also come and try there. Online dispute resolution that for digital payments we have introduced. So the idea is that customer, if there are gaps, there are frauds happening, we should provide a platform, method, means, so that they come to know, or at least their grievances are addressed and redressed. I can talk about switch on, switch off, which has been provided on the card transactions. It gives you a lot of comfort that when you are traveling, whether in India or abroad, you know that no transaction can happen if I have switched off my online transaction or ATM withdrawals, etc. So these are all trust building measures, which ultimately what we are seeing is that onboarding is increasing. And as Mr. Rajesh referred to, the challenge is how to make this irreversible. The growth has to only go up, only north. So that we have to ensure that if people are getting onboarded, if the trust in the system is there, definitely the graph will always go north. So the process has to be made irreversible. So once a person gets onboarded, and the vision for 2025, it talks about 4 E's and 5 I's. 4 E's is e-payments by everyone, everywhere, and every time. And then the 5 I's are inclusion, integrity, innovation, institutionalization, and internationalization. So we are kind of all these pieces, if we put together and we ensure that innovation with responsibility, responsible innovation as we always use loosely, if those are taken care of, I think we as a system, it's not about regulator, it has to be a coordinated effort with the fintechs, with the banks, regulated entities, as well as the regulator, to ensure that the trust which is already there, and it's quite high, it is only kind of we scale up, and therefore the evolution is scaled up further. So that is how we are.
I agree with you, because I think one of the recent initiatives of RBI is this 24/7 helpline, right? The DigiSati, which as an industry, everyone came together, although it's on the first phase right now. Second is all this Amitabh Bachchan advertisements on TV,
Yeah, exactly.
right? What can you?
Yeah, RBI कहता है, if you go to the RBI website, you will find all the details. Then we have got Mr. Amitabh Bachchan as the brand ambassador for this awareness on digital, all kinds of transactions and frauds. We have certain international players in cricket, badminton. They are all now pro bono, means being an employee. We are trying to reach to the last corner and tell that yes, be aware, these are SMSing, phishing, all kinds of things are happening, but if you are aware, things are taken care of. Still people fall into the trap, maybe more awareness, electronic, print media, we are all kind of trying to engage, but then as all of us sitting here, it is each one of us responsibility that we make people sitting on my right and left, center, everywhere aware that these are the risks, these are things which are happening, let us be aware. Otherwise, digital payments, digital transactions are as safe as anywhere in the world. In fact, we are the leaders, and when we go for international meetings, they are all overawed by the kind of payment system and the evolution which is, and the development which is happening in this sector. Because they know if India can do it, which is a diverse population with a vast geography, anybody can do it, but still they are not able to do it. So we must educate and make people aware and see that the trust in the ecosystem is not restored, it is further enhanced.
So Rajesh, so changing the track a bit. So as a technology company, do you think technology is shaping the consumer behavior, or is it vice versa? For example, the consumer behaviors, helps in the evolution of payment ecosystem that we understand. What are the kind of offerings that is coming up? Is it primarily due to the consumer's need, behavior, so?
Sure. No, absolutely. Again, I think there's no yes or no answer for this. It's a both ways thing. But I think to build some perspective, right? Since we do a lot of data analytics and insight, when we started, we used to do a lot of, let's say, descriptive analytics, right? What it means is you'll analyze historical trends, you'll see how people are behaving, and based on that, you create solutions, right? Then eventually we move to something called predictive analytics, right? We start predicting based on what the historical trends were, and then create solutions before the consumers actually need, right? And then there is something which nowadays is more called as prescriptive, that it is not only just good enough to predict, but we also need to build awareness around what they should do, right? Which is what prescriptive is all about. Now, to answer the question from a technology standpoint, absolutely, based on what consumers need, there are technology and solutions that we have built over the years. But now the power of computing, as we say artificial intelligence, is such that the time which it used to compute and used to take a very long time is now reduced. And hence, at a real-time basis, we can really ensure that those behaviors are not only, let's say, evaluated, but also be predictive for future with all the supervised and unsupervised models that we have in artificial intelligence. And then we could create solutions much earlier than when their need arise. And that's what all, I would say, technology companies, many of the fintechs are in, thinking a lot ahead in terms of what future needs will arise based on what we have seen and the pace at which changes are happening. And you would have heard that it's a cliche statement, it's much higher than what it used to be. So we are creating those solutions. Now, again, to your point on are we over predicting, are we under predicting? There's a well-known statement which we say we sometime overdo for things that will happen 1 year from now, but we definitely underdo for things that will happen 5 years from now. So as in whether it's our organization or how the world is moving, we need to go both ways. While we need to continuously create products and solutions on what consumer behaviors are, but then predict what will happen in future and how can we are available there real time, right, to bridge those gaps.
Okay, let me put the question in a different way. Now we see the products like BNPL,
Yeah.
right? So was this a product offering which was sort of a bait to the consumer, or do you think there is a need because you have EMIs and other ways, right? So what are these products, the offerings? So the other day we were talking about SNPL. So why don't you talk about that?
Absolutely. So again, everyone knows that BNPL. Initially it used to be okay. I will go to a showroom, buy a refrigerator, probably pay 5%, 10% of the down payment, and rest of the things will get deducted, right? I think BNPL, the way it is integrated to our daily purchases now, right, with all the e-commerce giants, it's a much more integrated version, much more convenient version, and hence we see, especially for young and millennial population, I think they will probably not aspire for too long to get things. I think when we were growing up, even bicycle used to be our birthday gift, right? And we used to wait for a year that I need to work harder to get a bicycle on my birthday. I think today's population is more around, yes, I will have the capability to pay, but meanwhile, with all guardrails in place, I would like to buy this because that's an impulse buy, and I really want to have iPhone 14 with me before it gets launched in India. I think that's how the behaviors are. Now to talk about the other interesting thing which you spoke about, save now, pay later. Again, I'm sure there are a lot of fintechs now also in the market where that's also serving a particular segment, right? If I go back to again those indexes thing which we spoke about. Now, in last 2.5, 3 years, what we have also seen is globally, and not only in India, the savings have increased manifold, right? People were not able to spend a lot on travel as well as on discretionary spend. Hence, a lot of savings have developed. So there is a population who would, like to get benefits from their saving. It's not like a fixed deposit, but in the way where some of their savings can actually be leveraged and give them advantage to buy something aspirational in mid-term and not in immediate term. And there are companies which are really thriving on leveraging that aspect of consumers and offering them solutions by working a real good model with the different providers in the industry. So again, a lot coming ahead. I'm sure many companies are working to ensure that in an end-to-end payment flow, where are they relevant and how do we plug those gaps? So many of those solutions, I would say, really exciting to see how next 6 months and 12 months are going to play in that area.
Sir, yesterday the governor did talk about the central bank digital currency. He mentioned that RBI is working on it and they will probably start with the wholesale launch followed by retail. Now, what problem is a central bank's digital currency in India trying to address? What will the design look like? And what safeguards do you think we have in place to ensure that the security of the currency and citizens' privacy, and more importantly, I don't think this is a consumer's preference to, that led to a development of CBDC. It's a technology development. So what's your view on some of these questions?
So you will be disappointed that some of the questions I may not be able to respond because it's in works and we all understand. But on the motive and motivations and technology, I'll definitely try to cover. To start with, I must say this is the consumer behavior which is kind of leading to this, not only in India, across the globe. How it is? We all know the private cryptocurrencies. For the next generation, it looks like cryptocurrency is a revolution, and some of the other sides use that the technology is something which is going to bring this, and everybody started talking about it. So CBDC is nothing but a physical currency converted into a digital currency. Physical cash which we have is digital. Now, if that is backed by a sovereign or by the central bank, and the underlying technology could be new age technology or could be any technology, but as long as it is backed by sovereign, backed by the central bank, I think the trust, which presently is not there when we talk about private currencies. In fact, I always say private currency or privately issued currency is an oxymoron, because a currency cannot be privately issued, and if it is privately issued, it cannot be a currency. So therefore, what we wanted to do is that those next gen people who want to get into this, why not get on with CBDC and enjoy the technology, new technology which is going to support it. Now, the other motivations are the financial inclusion part. Despite a lot of efforts, lot of awareness program, we still find deep interiors where there is no internet, no connectivity, no electricity. There are use cases in CBDC where you get offline facility. So maybe now that a person will know that it is a risk-free or it is a central bank issued currency, as we all know, it is the liability of the central bank. So directly central bank money, if I'm holding, the trust in that currency will be much more than what we have in the present electronic money. So with offline functionality, with trust, maybe the idea is that we will be able to reach the interiors of the country, and people will be started using it. Other motivations are, again, the huge country, the expenditure on currency management, which is physical currency, right from the printing to the time it reaches the bank's currency chest, the transportation, the storage. All that will be history the day. We are not envisaging that it will happen in next 5 years or next 2 years, next 7 years. It's all because we are taking a lead in this. These are all we expect will happen, and ultimately the gains will be that the sovereign, the country will gain. And as he referred to governor's statement, yes, we are working very actively on this, various kind of technology, the security, you mentioned about security, that is again utmost importance, because again consumers who would use CBDC, we need to be very sure that the trust in CBDC is there when we go for a formal launch whenever in the distant future. But we are working on that, various kinds of use cases we are trying, the technology we are testing, we are also looking at the architecture, the design. I will not be able to answer to your specific question, which design. But then we are looking at a wholesale segment. Wholesale means it will be between financial institutions only, and the retail, which will be like people like us can use. Both we are working. Maybe wholesale will come out first. Try to see where the issues are, and if no issues are there, then definitely we move to the next stage. Then we'll try retail, we'll get feedback from the users, and accordingly, based on the feedback, if tweaks are required, if changes are required, if the technology, the platform is to be changed, the throughput is a big issue because it's a huge country, the number of transactions, the TPS we talk about. So all are on our plate, and we are looking at everything. Let us hope that we get onto CBDC ecosystem again, not in a very far from now, but yes, we want to be very sure before we formally launch for a countrywide CBDC.
Just a quick rejoinder. What is it that UPI cannot do that there is a need for a CBDC? Because in other countries, where there is no real-time payments, they leapfrog to CBDC, at least at times. So India has a thriving UPI. I know offline payments is one area, but do you think cross-border is another area that, that could help in CBDC?
Yeah. Let me again clarify that UPI is part of payment system. CBDC is part of currency system. Ultimately, the currency system gets merged. One leg will be in payments because ultimately we pay through currency. So there are two different systems so far as a regulator we understand. Now, if we are already so much ahead in payment system, why do we need CBDC? The simple answer is, why not provide more options to people? And as I said, this is central bank's liability, direct claim on the central bank. The trust on CBDC is, as and when people adopt it, will be much more than what we have in electronic money. One of the important features which I would like to mention is the programmability part, which you cannot put in physical cash. Programmability, when I say, see, to the direct benefit transfer, I always refer to some scheme which government announces, Pradhan Mantri Anna Yojana. Whether the people are with that money are purchasing grocery, we do not know. We credit the amount to the beneficiary's account, but after that we don't know what the amount has been used for. But in CBDC, you can program it to ensure that the end use is what you want it to be used for. If it is for grocery, you can only use for grocery. It may be far-fetched in future. Even the loans, the MSME loans will be programmed so that that amount can only be used for MSMEs. So it kind of takes care of so many aspects apart from various other features. When you talked about cross-border, let me tell you the benefit of cross-border in CBDC will be there is no concept of time zone difference because it is instant settlement. So whatever be the time in other country, the settlement happens immediately. The efficiency is amazing because of the technology which some of the countries are trying on the pilot basis. So the benefits which comes from cross-border is also immense. That is another use case. So first we build domestic CBDC and then we can look at how to cross border and then align with other countries. For that, other countries also have to join that bandwagon and do a cross border.
Thank you. Final question to you, Rajesh. So what are the key trends and opportunities in the next decade in digital payments? I'm sorry, you have probably 1.5 minutes.
Yeah, no, I understand. You were already asked on the time. So I would say some of the trends we have already spoken in terms of different modes of payment. I think one of the thing is about leveraging blockchain, right? To an extent, and that has an application not only to the payment field but many other fields, right? Like Mr. Anuj is also saying on tracking whether the objective of what we really wanted was achieved eventually or not, right? In payments, and I can tell MasterCard as a company has the second highest patents in blockchain around the world. So a lot of products and solutions are built with that future in mind on how do we ensure that whatever payment methods we create, ensure that the objective of some of those payments are met, till the last point, and we are able to track the entire, I would say, workflow through how it passes by. So, one of the key trends which I will talk to, about, again, I will not be able to predict all the products and solution, but things that all the companies which are really in this space need to take care about: agility, right? How quickly we can come up with the solution. Gone are the days when we used to take months to come up with a product. I think by that time there are 5 other companies who are able to launch this very quickly. So, rather than being specific about any product or solution, I will say trends will be more around be agile, as quickly and quick on feet. Many, I would say, opportunities will be there for the companies to really thrive on and, come up with those. That's what, we will see that'll occur for many more years.
Thank you. Can we allow one question or one audience question? Yeah. Is there any question that you would like to pose to the panelists? Anyone? All right. We have a question? Sorry, yeah.
Hello. Yes. Hi, sir. At the fear of, at the possibility of sounding a bit naive, I would like to ask this question about digital currencies. So you mentioned these are backed, CBDC specifically is backed by sovereign bonds, if I'm not wrong, or sovereign.
So like physical currency is backed by assets, this will also be backed by assets. Okay. Right? Sovereign, not the sovereign bonds.
Sovereign assets.
By the country. Okay. Yeah.
So my question mainly is that there are certain, I don't know if you call them private currencies that are backed by things like, so for example, if you hold a specific amount of that currency, you are liable to receive a certain amount of kilowatts of power generated by solar means, right? Solar energy. So is there something like that the government could plan around CBDC where the value of the currency is not based on, it's based on energy-based assets, sustainable energy-based assets, where something like that, is that possible?
I don't think I think he's referring to mining part of it, but which is different from.
No, not mining. Sorry. So the value of certain currencies, private currencies or certain currencies that are outside regulated digital currencies tend to be defined by things like sustainable energy kilowatts, right? So I worked with a company in Ahmedabad who does this. They have a currency that guarantees the owner a specific amount of kilowatts that is generated by solar power in somewhere basically, right? So what do you think about this model? Can CBDC based on these sort of assets can be based on?
No, see, that is why the Reserve Bank's stance on private currency is very clear. What it is backed by, whether there is an asset, whose liability is it. Therefore, even the stable coins, if you are referring to that it is backed by something, like you are talking about energy, who is monitoring that, whether it is pegged to the right kind of assets. Yeah. So that is why the concern, and therefore the entire globe knows the Reserve Bank's stand on private currencies, right? So the present system where we issue currency, it is backed by asset. Similarly, digital currency, as I told, it is mimicking physical currency into digital form. So again, it will be backed by assets as presently we are doing it. So there won't be any difference so far as backing by assets is concerned, even if it is digital. All right?
Thanks, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Before I conclude, let me say that there are always that regulators are kind of stifle innovation. So let me say that we are not, as a regulator, we only put guardrails, and so that the innovations happen around the boundary, inside the boundary, don't cross the boundary. So all the innovations, so therefore all the fintechs who are here, again very famous saying that customer is at the center, and therefore we should not feel the consumer's behavior is kind of inhibiting things. In fact, they are the purpose. We should look at them and then innovate within the guardrails which a regulator time and again places before. So that's the message I thought I'll convey to all my friends.
You have summed it up very well. It's been a fantastic discussion. Thank you so much, Mr. Anuj and Mr. Rajesh.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Thanks, Anuj.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And if I may please request all our speakers to come together for a group photograph. And I believe that was a wonderful point also shared by Shri Anuj Ranjan in terms of the guardrails that allow actually in terms of fueling the purpose more than anything. So that's absolutely a wonderful point there. And we've had some wonderful takeaways from this particular trialogue as well. And that being said, we'll also set the tone for the next fireside chat. So kindly be seated. We'll get it started in just a couple of minutes. Thank you very much. Thank you, sir. I'd like to inform our members of the audience that the next session will commence in the next few minutes. So that being said, all the ones who are still standing there, you can please come forward and take your seats. We'll also set the stage and get the session started in the next couple of minutes. Thank you. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, time to deep dive into our next fireside chat. While we do so, once again, I'm going to request everyone to please take your seats. And we love how the energy flows in even after the discussion, even after the panel sessions, or for that matter, the chats that happen here. We love how the set of audience also want to take the questions forward with our speakers. So on that note, let's move ahead and let's get the next session started. Well, we do realize that Aadhaar indeed has been the bedrock for all the government welfare schemes as well. This particular fireside chat is actually all about rethinking welfare distribution through Aadhaar. And joining us, first up, we have with us Rajiv Agarwal, Director and Head of Public Policy, India, Meta, who will be spearheading this fireside chat. And joining Rajiv on the stage, we have with us Dr. Saurabh Garg, Chief Executive Officer, Unique Identification Authority of India, UIDAI. So if I may please invite Mr. Rajiv Agarwal and Dr. Saurabh Garg, and can we please have a huge, huge round of applause for the transformational impact that Aadhaar has had in our lives indeed. And this time we'll focus on rethinking welfare distribution through Aadhaar. So that's the focus of our session. And I'd like to hand over the proceedings to Mr. Rajiv Agarwal. Over to you, sir.
Thank you.
the world's truly a stage. And I think so India is absolutely at the center of it. And India today is at the center of the digital ecosystem globally. And I think so you have a very crucial role to play, and it's indeed a privilege for me to be here with Dr. Saurabh Garg, who is, who is at the heart, at the center, and who's managing the entire Aadhaar ecosystem, which is at the very center of the Jam Trinity, and literally maybe today the lifeline of India, if I were to say so, for all of us who have been entering airports, verifying our ITRs, or as simple as going to a kiosk to obtain a SIM card. Aadhaar is something which has become almost ubiquitous in our lives today. So a privilege to have you here, sir, and to welcome you on the stage.
Thank you. A pleasure for me to be here on this forum. And I must thank the organizers of the Global Fintech Fest for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here. And all I can say is that Aadhaar is happy to be the digital rails on which the digital economy is hopefully running well. And look forward to continuing the role of being the digital infrastructure, the digital public platform, so to say, and look forward to this journey as we move ahead.
Absolutely. Digital rails, I think that's, I'll take it off from there. So we have, and if my memory serves me correct, over 300 central schemes, 500 state schemes that are using Aadhaar for effective delivery of these services, welfare services to citizens across the length and breadth of India. Would really like to ask for your insights on how does Aadhaar really help in linking welfare distribution to the citizens and help the government in making sure that there's more effective and impactful delivery of these services to the citizens. And just as a side question, are there any other current schemes that you're looking at towards linking with Aadhaar in the near future?
Yeah. So let me just step back and say that it's been about 10 years, about a decade since Aadhaar started in 2010. And since then, we've reached a stage that we've issued about 1.34 billion, 134 Aadhaar cards. And we are at a stage where 100% of adult residents in the country have Aadhaar. So anyone above the age of 18, unless there are some isolated pockets, remote pockets, I would expect that everyone has an Aadhaar, and I'm sure, and I do hope that everyone in this room does have an Aadhaar. Otherwise, my statement would fall. So we've reached a stage where 100% of adult residents of the country have an Aadhaar. Even if we look at the 0 to 18 age group, it's between the ages of 5 or 6 to 18, also it's more than 92, 93%. And by the time they reach 18, it becomes 100%. And it's the 0 to 5 age group where every year we have about 2.5 to 3 crore births where the penetration is low, and that's an ongoing process. We work with the state governments, and by the time they reach 5 years, most of them have an Aadhaar. In fact, our objective is with the Aadhaar linkage with birth registration, that along with the birth certificates, we should be able to provide the Aadhaar number. Obviously, there would need to be a mandatory biometric update at the age of 5 and 15, so as to ensure that authentication can be done. But so given that after 10 years, we've reached this position of 100% adults having an Aadhaar, that in itself transforms the way that we can conceptualize and design programs and schemes. And I think that came to the fore when a couple of years back we launched, there was PM Kisan, there was Pehel, which enabled within a couple of months of the scheme being conceptualized that it got implemented. And that happened because of the existence of Aadhaar. As you mentioned, we have nearly 1,000 odd programs of the government, 650 of the state governments, around 300 odd of the central government, which are run on Aadhaar. And the reasons why they do, I think, are the benefits that Aadhaar offers for to these schemes. And just to enumerate some of them, one is obviously deduplication, that you can't have the same person twice in that same program, so there will be no doubling of benefits given to the same person or same family. The PDS, for example, has seen significant gains in this respect. The second is removal of ghost beneficiaries. So if the person actually doesn't exist, but someone has put that person's name, that automatically gets deleted once the Aadhaar authentication is done, and there is no biometric behind it, there is no fingerprint, no iris, no face behind it, automatically it gets deleted. The third is in terms of being able to transfer funds directly into the bank account of that person, and therefore the possibilities of leakage of funds reduce. Now we have reached a situation where right from the treasury to the ultimate beneficiary, for example, in the Prime Minister's Awas Yojana, you can have the funds getting transferred directly to the bank account based on the documentation that is done. And the fourth, I would say, is in terms of how we can identify beneficiaries. The ability to be able to target, select, identify beneficiaries with Aadhaar provides a totally new method. And it's because of these benefits is why all the schemes, the 1,000 odd schemes, and the focus is to ensure that any beneficiary-oriented scheme or a scheme oriented towards a group of beneficiaries. For example, family is a unit, PDS is linked to Aadhaar, or we have self-help groups or other groups of beneficiaries. So if any benefits, subsidies, or any service needs to be transferred to them, it can very well be done using the Aadhaar platform. And the authentication that Aadhaar offers 24/7 is the power that all these schemes leverage. So you are asking me what can be some of the new programs. Any program which wants to essentially remove ghost beneficiaries, remove duplication of beneficiaries would benefit by this. And the direct benefit transfer mission, which operates under the Cabinet Secretariat, they've done an analysis of the benefits that have accrued to different programs due to the direct benefits transfers offered by Aadhaar. And just in the 4 or 5 sectors that they've done the analysis, the benefits have been over 2 lakh crores over the past 5 to 7 years. So I think that's the reason why a lot of programs run on the Aadhaar rails, as you mentioned, and would benefit from that. And we would be very happy to ensure that these benefits are used by different programs and schemes.
That's actually amazing, and I'm sure, I had somewhere in my notes that the coverage is 99% of the adult population, so I actually stand corrected. And unless we are actually able to isolate maybe one table out here in the entire convention center, where 3 or 4 people could be seated without an Aadhaar in this entire setup, and that too will be, I guess, a tough one to find out here. Absolutely, but with the with the way Aadhaar has really changed the way schemes are run, the way schemes are even conceptualized. I mean, you mentioned PM Kisan or the Pehel schemes, which actually rolled out within 2 months of conceptualization, something which was unthinkable maybe a decade ago. So do you see a paradigm shift, a change coming in, say, in the next 5 years in terms of the welfare distribution, the way it is done, and especially in the linkage of Aadhaar to the way welfare schemes would be laid out?
Yeah. So I think as I mentioned, the different schemes and the focus that any beneficiary-oriented scheme. So I think now we have reached a stage where we can think of how we can move from an application-based process of selecting beneficiaries to an entitlement-based system, where keeping in view the entitlement or keeping in view the the kind of beneficiaries or and people who would be benefiting, we can move towards that, and that will also help in a much larger sense the inclusion of people of the at the vulnerable or at the bottom of the pyramid. And when Aadhaar was initially started, people spoke of the dangers of exclusion because of Aadhaar. And I would like to say that now, in fact, it's the benefit of inclusion because of Aadhaar, because automatically Aadhaar gives the platform to ensure that anyone who has an Aadhaar can get included in the program. So I think as a tool of inclusion in itself, using Aadhaar would help in that. And I think that's the vision of Digital India going forward, to look at how, and which is the vision also of Aadhaar, how it can help in the ease of living of residents. And that's the vision of Digital India. And Digital India encompasses not only the government sector, but also the private sector. And all the fintechs are out here today, startups are out here today. And we look forward to partnering with the different partners, sectors, private sector players, startups in this vision of Digital India, in which Aadhaar. And in fact, I would like to ask you that, since you are a representative of a very large platform, how do you think that more private sector can help in the vision of Digital India that the government is very keen to propagate going forward?
I'd not expected a reverse, but no, but thank you for this. I truly believe that even as the government has responsibility towards, say, the welfare schemes we've been talking of, and Aadhaar is so ably enabling the entire distribution of those welfare schemes, the corporate sector or the private sector too has a role to play, especially in terms of the vision of a digital India and a digitally enabled India. If I were to talk of Meta and the platforms that we operate under here, be it Facebook or Instagram or WhatsApp especially, and we do have a booth out here, then there's so much we can do. And I guess if we were to look at the last 2 years when the COVID pandemic hit us, the way the corporate sector also rose to the occasion to enable the delivery of services to people. So if it was tying up with MyGov on the COVID help desk and the COVID chatbot, with over 8 crore people, citizens of India, actually getting to avail authentic information on COVID through the MyGov chatbot, or almost 3.5 crore people downloading their vaccination certificates on the chatbot. And now, obviously, the latest addition is the DigiLocker services. So that's being rolled out in a phased manner. So we will see more and more of this digital enablement coming through these platforms. And obviously, it's partnering with the government. The two have to move hand in hand. Be it in terms of these citizen-centric services, be it in terms of enabling small businesses to run their businesses in a manner in which the online platforms are available for them to reach out to their customers and to actually be able to, even when there are geographical or other blockers, they can actually run their businesses. I guess, and this to us has been, it's been a great humbling experience, if I may say so, when people have actually used these platforms to connect with each other, to reach out to each other for help, for oxygen, for any other help that was needed. And I think so that has been a great learning experience for us also.
So, I mean, if I can just add to this, from Aadhaar side, from the UIDAI side, I would, in fact, want to mention it, since a large number of people, startups from the fintech world are here, that we look forward to working closely with a lot of players in the private sector on how they can also use the benefits of Aadhaar. Obviously, the issues of privacy, of consent remain paramount, but a voluntary usage of Aadhaar, by which the benefits of the eKYC onboarding of customers for different private sector can be enabled. And we already have some offline verification mechanisms which are based purely on the voluntary usage, as I meant, of the consent of the individual. There is the QR code, there is the XML file. So we would be, on our part also, happy going forward to look forward to working with them and look at opportunities that exist. But obviously, let me again say that privacy and consent remain strong pillars on which Aadhaar is based on, and that will remain paramount as we go ahead.
No, absolutely, and privacy has to be the mainstay for everything that we do, because I mean that's something all of us as individuals, as citizens, and as responsible corporates have to make sure that that is protected at all costs. So in fact, you did mention startups, and that's something we've, we passionately believe in. We have been at one point in time a startup ourselves. And so we are looking at bringing in startups even in the, as technology expands and we look at extended realities, we look at the metaverse, how can we bring, and India can actually be the hub of technological advances in that field. So that's something we are trying to advance. Through CBSE, we are trying to get an entirely new generation which is digitally enabled and teaching them the new technologies and exposing them to the possibilities that exist out there. So we feel that we have a role to play, and we would definitely like to walk hand in hand with the government and with obviously the UIDAI going forward. But let me come back to the point that you had made of almost the entire 100% of the adult population being covered by Aadhaar. And given the fact that we are talking of financial services, we are talking of the fintech sector out here, how do you see Aadhaar being leveraged for more effective delivery of financial services? The last maybe 5 to 10 years have actually been a game changer, but how do you see this being leveraged much more? And we do hear talk of Aadhaar 2.0. So what can the fintech sector expect from the Aadhaar 2.0?
The usage of Aadhaar in the financial sector has perhaps been the most heartening. I don't know whether I mentioned this. We have around 8 crore authentications a day that happen on a daily basis. Someone somewhere is using it 8 crore times a day. And nearly 40% of these authentications or usage of Aadhaar is for the Aadhaar-enabled payment systems, by which through the micro ATMs, which are these POS machines which are there with, let's say, a Kirana shop somewhere, there are nearly 50 lakh micro ATMs across the country, around 35 lakh operating on any given day on, if you pick. So, I mean, that also enables, if I can say that, makes geography history in the sense that even if you don't have a brick and mortar branch, the fact that you have a Kirana shop having this micro ATM, that villager can operate their bank accounts using them. They can deposit cash, they can withdraw cash by using Aadhaar authentication, fingerprint authentication. And the 6.5 lakh villages and 35 lakh machines opening at any time. So I think the banking sector has really leveraged the use of the Aadhaar ecosystem. Going forward, we are working with the regulators, whether it's RBI, whether it's SEBI, IRDA, PFRDA, on how regulated entities which are working under their supervision, how they can also use the power of Aadhaar with, of course, consent of the individual to get onboarded as an investor, as in the fintech sector, in the NBFC sector. And I'm happy to say that in the last few months itself, nearly 300 odd entities, NBFCs, investment advisors regulated by SEBI, and such other entities regulated by any one of the regulators have been onboarded. And we expect that the onboarding experience of getting new customer acquisition for them would become so much more seamless going forward. On our part, we are looking at ways by which we can help in the ease of living of residents, as I mentioned, and that ease of living would include the ability for them to look at investment opportunities that they have, or banking opportunities, or payment opportunities that an individual has, and how more and more such entities can leverage Aadhaar for onboarding new residents and give residents more choice going forward. The number of such applications which come through the regulators is increasing, and I'm quite hopeful that this will further increase the ways by which Aadhaar is being used by these entities. I can add one more thing, that we've built a sandbox in our tech center, so that anyone wanting to offer a new service, we can do a proof of concept, and so that they can test out some new service which has not been hitherto thought of. Obviously, we restrict ourselves to those entities which are regulated by any one of the regulators. So as long as it's a regulated entity, we would be very happy to have them look at what can be done. And in fact, immediately after this session is one such mechanism that we have developed to streamline onboarding of new customers using our Aadhaar app. So that would be discussed, and we would be happy to get comments of the fintechs who are here today to see how that process can get further streamlined. So we have an authentication system which obviously pings in onto our servers, and we have the verification system which is offline using the QR code, using the XML file, and now that we would be discussing, and which is in a way our first offering from the sandbox that we have internally, the use of the Aadhaar app, which can be done much more in a wide manner, and of course with the consent of the resident or the mobile phone owner on whose phone the mobile app rests, the Aadhaar app rests.
That's actually pretty interesting, and I would say music to our ears, and a lot of people out here would would really go for the sandbox. I mean, it's actually work being cut out for all of us to use the sandbox, and obviously the Aadhaar, which is one of the first offerings that you've mentioned out there. But let me move our focus to the to the global arena, and we have seen reports UIDAI collaborating with international agencies in the recent past, and this is basically on the Aadhaar digital ID architecture that you've been establishing. So, and this is something we have been seeing even in UPI. We have the NPCI, and the kind of templates that India is preparing and setting up, which are now being followed increasingly by other countries and across the globe. We do have the G20 presidency also now coming to India later this year, and India is going to be hosting G20 for the next 1 year. Do you see Aadhaar as being one of the mainstays of India's, so to say, India enabling the globally integrated fintech, on the fintech sector and financial technologies?
There is a lot of international interest in the Aadhaar architecture, and the fact that it is a frugal architecture, it is cost effective, and it's been scaled up within a period of 10 years to a level of 130 crores or more. We get a lot of visits, delegations from different countries across the globe. We are in touch with the World Bank and other UN agencies on how the digital architecture offered by Aadhaar can be gainfully used by other countries. So going forward, we no doubt look forward to working with other countries who wish to develop their own legal identities. In fact, the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals has as target 16.9 a legal identity for all by the year 2030. So Aadhaar offers an excellent scalable model for many countries. On our part, we would be very happy to work with them. No doubt, the G20 chair offers another opportunity to showcase the India stack and the work that's been done in Digital India. And I think we have a number of offerings and on our part, and if I can put it on behalf of Digital India, definitely we look forward to working with other countries. And I'm sure we look forward that our ecosystem partners in India would also get the opportunity to work with partners across the world in developing the India stack and the other products of Digital India across the world.
That's really heartening. I am not sure how much time we have, but I can see the clock still gives us a few minutes more. So I'd like to open up to the audience any questions that you would like to raise from Dr. Saurabh.
There's this lady out here.
Second row. Yes, please, ma'am. Could you just identify yourself and then ask your question?
So, my name is Savita. I represent a company called Hakdarshak. We are in the business of helping the government's agenda of scheme saturation. So we work with a lot of beneficiaries, helping them to discover their schemes through our tech platform, and then also providing them the services to get access to the schemes. One of the challenges that we're constantly seeing, right? So you're right in saying the saturation of Aadhaar enrollment is 100%. The biggest challenge we see and the biggest reason for exclusions from benefit delivery is the fact that their Aadhaars are not updated. And one of the challenges from an ecosystem perspective players like us have today is that private sector is not, to quite a large extent, it's a very small set of players who are allowed to do Aadhaar updates. So is there any thought in terms of opening that up, of course with the right guardrails in place, to enable that issue to be corrected? Because we see that even though the entitlement exists, there is exclusion because the beneficiary database is not updated in Aadhaar. Thank you.
Yeah, so let me just mention that updates is the area that the focus is now, because as I mentioned, enrollment is now more or less behind us. And I can mention that last year alone, there were nearly 20 crore updates that happened across. We are expanding our infrastructure and we are onboarding all postmen who have been given tablets and they can do updates. So we'll have 1.5 lakh postmen so they can go house to house and update. A large number have already been updated and going forward, all the postmen will get updated. We have around more than 50,000 centers across the country where these updates happen. A lot of the citizen service centers which exist, if they meet the benchmarks that we've set out, many of them also are on this on our update platform or our update ecosystem. Apart from that, we've also put on the online mechanism. We have an online portal where people can update their address, which is one of the most common fields for updation. So we are looking at ways to strengthen the update ecosystem. As you mentioned, we need to have the appropriate guardrails in place to prevent any kind of frauds happening. We are also now encouraging people to update their Aadhaars at least once in 10 years. We've just recently brought out the notification for that. And given the fact that it's been about 10 to 12 years since we started Aadhaar, it's a time that at least once in 10 years the update happens. And possibly going forward, we'll be encouraging for biometric updates also. I'm confident with these steps, we would have an ecosystem, if not already in place, with a combination of the mobile app, the online portal, the postman, and our enrollment 50,000 odd, which will take care of this. And we are seeing increasingly the number of people using the online mechanism is so much higher. And I think that would take care of even some of the areas which may have got left out.
I think we have time for one more question.
Hi, here. एकता फ्रॉम जी बिजनेस। सर मेरा सवाल आपसे ये होगा कि कस्टमर से जुड़ी, कंज्यूमर से जुड़ी और कौन सी नई सुविधाएं आप आधार के साथ लिंक करना चाहेंगे, और स्पेशली जो बीते दिनों में हमने फिंगरप्रिंट फ्रॉड भी देखा, तो बायोमेट्रिक्स को लेकर आप क्या कहना चाहेंगे?
जैसे मैंने बोला कि हमारा विजन है ईज ऑफ लिविंग। जो भी स्कीम द बेनिफिट जो चाहती है फॉर आधार प्लेटफॉर्म यूसेज, विच इज़ डीडुप्लीकेशन, रिमूवल ऑफ डुप्लीकेट्स एंड घोस्ट बेनिफिशरीज, वो स्कीम जो भी है बेनिफिशरी ओरिएंटेड स्कीम्स हैं, हम उनको चाहेंगे कि वो आधार प्लेटफॉर्म यूज़ करे और इसका बेनिफिट करे। Cyber security is one area that we are constantly on top of, whether it's any attempted fraud, any report of fraud, and we continually update our security systems in terms of that. Recently, there were some attempts we heard of use of what is known as gummy fingers. So we brought in a liveliness check also in the fingerprint authentication system. So we nip our attempt is to nip any attempts to try and overcome the systems. We have a strong cyber security team. We work with different agencies, both technical agencies, intelligence agencies, to get information on this. In fact, we've recently announced a bug bounty program also that we would like to work with ethical hackers and see what kind of vulnerabilities they can detect in our systems in a closed environment. So let me assure you that fraud prevention attempts by this is something that we are constantly abreast of, and that's highest on our priority. As I mentioned, we do about 8 crore authentications a day, and there have been attempts, but various attempts are where there is some amount of collusion or some other kind of issues. It's not something which is related to our Aadhaar ecosystem, but even then, it is something we give the highest importance to.
Thank you. I think so. That's really heartening to note. I know our time's up, so I think we'll have to move on. But thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's been a pleasure being here on the stage with you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm going to request you both to please come together for a quick photograph. Ladies and gentlemen, we managed to gather some very salient data points through this session, for which I'd like to thank Dr. Saurabh Garg. Thank you very much, sir, for joining in. And thank you very much, Mr. Rajiv, for beautifully spearheading this fireside chat for us. On that note, ladies and gentlemen, it's time to move forward with our next session, and we're going to quickly set the stage for the same. That being said, I'm sure you can all notice that I'm wearing my badge as well. And the reason is that I'm also going to urge all of you to ensure you all please wear your badges. This evening we have a session featuring a government official, and for security reasons, I'd like to request all of you to please ensure that you keep wearing your badges at all the times. So that's a humble request, kindly do so. And with that, we're about to also focus on the opportunities for fintech as we explore new horizons in Aadhaar usage. And that being said, we're about to get the next session started in just a minute or two. That being said, I'm going to once again request everyone to please take your seats. Thank you for your patience, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for being seated as you get up for the next session. We're focusing on exploring new horizons in Aadhaar usage as we also explore the opportunities in fintech. And before we invite our speaker on stage, first up we have with us Colonel Nikhil Sinha, Director UIDAI, who will be setting the context for this session and also introducing our speaker for this session for all of us. So on that note, ladies and gentlemen, first up, can we have a huge round of applause and please help me welcome on stage Colonel Nikhil Sinha, Director UIDAI. A huge round of applause, please. Thank you so much.
So good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This session is all about demonstrating to you certain evolutionary ideas that are taking shape at UIDAI. Let me begin by giving you a did you know. Did you know that the first Aadhaar was issued in September 2010 in this very state of Maharashtra? So now, in about a week from now, we shall be completing 12 years of the first Aadhaar being issued and entering our 13th year. This last decade has been highly eventful for Aadhaar. Apart from successfully facing the legal challenges at the Supreme Court and incorporating the essence of the Supreme Court judgment in the Aadhaar Act, we've gone about rolling out the world's most sophisticated and the largest digital identity program. And in doing so, if I may add, allaying the fears of a lot of skeptics. As you just heard the CEO saying, we have enrolled 1.3 billion residents and authenticated them 81 billion times. Through direct benefit transfers by saving leakages, we have effected a savings of more than 2.2 lakh crores in welfare distribution. These are astounding numbers by any means, and I'm sure at the time of conception of Aadhaar, these were unimaginable. So we've gone there, done that. Having achieved all of that, what next? It's perhaps time for Aadhaar to reimagine itself, to continue to stay ahead of the times. It is time for Aadhaar to adopt new technologies, to envision and to enable new use cases. It is time for Aadhaar to perhaps play a larger role in the India story, which is just about starting. It is time for Aadhaar 2.0. Now, as part of our vision for Aadhaar 2.0, there is a renewed focus, as the CEO just mentioned, on increasing the ease of living of residents. This is being envisioned by intensifying Aadhaar usage, both in offline and online mode, both for the government as well as the non-government sectors. Now, offline verification of Aadhaar has got great potential, which is really waiting to be harnessed. It has the inherent strengths of being secure, private, and voluntary. As also, since the Aadhaar number per se doesn't get shared in offline usage of Aadhaar, there is very little requirement of infrastructure being developed. Add to that the possibilities which open up when you start using the local face match, offline face matching of Aadhaar. So the two modes of offline authentication, of offline verification, that is the secure QR code and the XML, are already part of the Aadhaar's innovative product portfolio. Perhaps what is holding back the explosion, the exponential adoption of offline usage of Aadhaar is the process friction that is there in the sharing of offline Aadhaar. And that is something which is easily addressed by technology. The ideas being presented to you today aim to address these very areas. They will get to the residents more services and benefits, And therein lies the opportunity for you, our industry partners, the Fintech. Now, Dr. Vivek Raghavan, advisor UIDAI, will be presenting these new ideas to you. These ideas are just taking shape at UIDAI. At the moment, they are ideas or proofs of concept, if you may. They would undergo the complete process of consultation with all stakeholders. That includes the public and the industries, before they are finally rolled out in the shape of applications. Today's demonstration is one such exercise in making you, the Fintech, aware of the latest developments in UIDAI and also obtaining feedback from you. So now I hand you over to Dr. Vivek Raghavan, who will move forward with the presentation and with the demonstrations.
Hello, everyone. I'm here to tell you some of the new ways in which Aadhaar can be used. And I think that's part of the entire Aadhaar 2.0 and reimagining new ways in which Aadhaar can be used. We already know, as CEO Sir said, we have 8 crore Aadhaar authentications every day. But there are still many more opportunities for usage of Aadhaar. How can we expand it to an order of magnitude greater than where it is being used today? And I think that our thought, and as CEO said, as part of Aadhaar 2.0, we are creating this sandbox of new ideas, of new ways of using this digital platform to provide different kinds of services to the citizens of the country. And I want to actually show some examples of how this can be done. And this is really, and this is really to actually rekindle the imagination of how Aadhaar can be used. And when we do this, we have to look at 3 things. That how can we allow residents to use their own Aadhaar to avail services? And the focus, the principles need to be simplicity. It needs to be simple, extremely easy to use. The focus needs to be privacy, right? Especially that privacy is one of the critical things. And of course, security. And we've figured out some ways in which Aadhaar can be used by a much larger set of people in the country by leveraging 3 technologies that Aadhaar already has. The first one is offline KYC verification. I don't know, I mean, this is something that Aadhaar had launched about 2 to 3 years ago, and it actually provides a way by which people can verify Aadhaar offline. And now it is something which is being used by some people, but I think the usage we want to simplify the usage of this. The second part is that Aadhaar has announced that we have this new kind of this new modality of matching called local face matching, which actually happens locally on your device. And of course, we're trying to combine these two with the existing mAadhaar application to actually unlock completely new experiences through which Aadhaar can be used. And that's what I hope to show you in the next half an hour. Coming back to the core principles, right? The first core principle is simplicity. Simplicity is, of course, that we need to have a very different kind of resident user experience for the Aadhaar. That's number one. And the second thing, of course, is that I should be able to use Aadhaar offline. So I don't need to have any connectivity to UIDAI or to CIDR to do that. The second part, of course, is privacy. Especially when you're using Aadhaar on a day-to-day basis, you don't really want to actually use the Aadhaar number to actually avail the service. The next point is that we'll establish, you have now the ability to establish proof of presence in Aadhaar through local face matching. And finally, this KYC itself can actually be done in a granular manner so that you can provide granular control of Aadhaar usage by the resident. So therefore, if I want to reveal only my name and photograph, then I can actually reveal only a granular portion of my KYC information. And of course, the consent is the other core part of the entire Aadhaar experience. So it provides a systematic way of locally storing user consent that people. And finally, it's very interesting that when all these pieces come together, you actually come up with something which is equivalent to a two-factor authentication. The credential itself, the offline KYC, is secure because it is digitally signed for authenticity. And also, there are mechanisms by which now this can be shared in an encrypted manner, so it can only be used by the entity who has requested it. So we'll talk about 4 different use cases that are related, that actually come out of these group of these sets of technologies that we're talking about. So the first method is actually offline KYC through deep linking. And here, what is it that we are trying to do? It allows a resident to share their own offline KYC within any entity app on their own smartphone. And that is the core principle, that you can share your offline KYC on your own smartphone. And who can use this? This is any resident who actually has Aadhaar installed on their phone, as well as the entity application running on the same phone. So therefore, the prerequisite is, of course, that Aadhaar would have been installed and the user profile would have been created. And the user profile can not just be created for the resident themselves, but it may also be for any other family member who may use the same smartphone. So let's look a little deeper as to how this would work. The first step is the resident would initiate the collection of this offline KYC from an entity app. An entity app can be anything. It could be an e-commerce app. It could be a mobility app. It could be an event or travel booking app. And the only thing, the primary thing that the resident needs to provide is they need to provide their name, and they need to see whether this KYC requires a proof of presence or not. There are some other factors there which are all kind of, which certainly can be derived from the entity app, things like encryption and app name and transaction ID and other things. But the core thing is actually your name and your proof of presence. Now, when this happens, automatically through deep linking, what happens is that your control is transferred from the entity app to Aadhaar. And as long as the name matches the profile which is available in Aadhaar, a request for consent to share your KYC shows up. And if once you provide your consent, then what happens is, if proof of presence is required, you end up doing a local face matching, which actually says that it is indeed you who is providing this consent. And if proof of presence is not required, as in many applications, you don't need to do that. And then finally, the control gets returned back to the entity app, and the offline KYC is now within the entity. So this is literally as simple as how as how simple this entire process is. So I'll go through a couple of videos which actually show how this thing works. We've actually done a POC of this, and we'll show how this thing works. Can we play the first video, please?
Sharing offline KYC with an entity through deep linking with proof of presence. The resident needs to install the Aadhaar app and the entity application on their own smartphone. Aadhaar offline KYC is initiated by the resident himself using the entity app. The resident enters his or her name and clicks on Proof of Presence. Through deep linking, the control shifts to the Aadhaar app. If the name in the offline KYC request matches an already created profile in Aadhaar, consent of the resident is requested. The consent of the resident is recorded. Since proof of presence is required, a local face match is initiated. The local face match captures the face image, performs a liveness check, and matches the captured face against offline KYC photo. Finally, digitally signed and encrypted offline KYC information is shared with the entity application. Please note that the Aadhaar number of the resident was not required anywhere in the process.
So I think this shows you how simple this could be, right? So now let's take the same thing where you don't even need proof of presence. So certainly in certain cases, KYC using proof of presence may be important. So let's play the second video. It's actually quite similar, but it's simpler.
Sharing offline KYC through deep linking with no proof of presence. The process is initiated by the resident using the entity app, which is requesting Aadhaar offline KYC. The resident enters his or her name and clicks No on proof of presence. Now control shifts to the Aadhaar app through deep linking. The consent of the resident is recorded in Aadhaar app. Then digitally signed and encrypted offline KYC information is shared with the entity application. Please note that the Aadhaar number of the resident was not required anywhere in the process.
So this shows you how simple it could be. And I think this can actually unlock so many different applications where Aadhaar can be used, and you can take the benefit of both offline KYC verification as well as the local face matching capability within Aadhaar. So let's move to a second use case. And the second use case is slightly different. In this case, the entity app is running on another device, which is controlled by an operator. And the Aadhaar app is running on your own smartphone. So of course, the same requirement that the profile needs to be created on Aadhaar. And of course, that's the requirement is there. So then in this case, what happens is the operator collects the name of the resident. Right? The difference here is the program is the process is initiated on the business device, right? Whatever that is, maybe a tablet, maybe a PC, maybe something. And then once you do that, actually the entity application generates a QR code. And this QR code is actually the offline KYC request. So it has everything that's there, which is previously generated through deep linking. In this case, what's happening is you have name and proof of presence are the two key concepts. Beyond that, there are encryption keys and app names, etc. The other thing, of course, is a callback URL as to where actually the offline KYC needs to be shared. That's the only difference in the request that is there in the previous set of cases and the ones that are here. So in this case, what happens? Once that happens, the control will shift to Aadhaar. And if the name matches, the consent will be collected. And after that, the local face match will be triggered if proof of presence is required. And of course, upon successful completion, Aadhaar will use the callback URL to upload the offline KYC. And of course, user consent is again locally shared within the Aadhaar app. And of course, the entity displays the offline KYC. Now the offline KYC has reached the operator's device. And that's the core thing. Authentication, the local face match and the KYC sharing still is happening on your own device, but it gets shared to the other device which is run by. So let's play these videos. The first video is actually with the, where you're sharing it through QR code with face match. Let's play the video, please.
Sharing offline KYC using a QR code with proof of presence. Let's see how Aadhaar offline KYC can be shared on a device controlled by an operator. The process is initiated on the entity app on the operator device where the resident name is entered and proof of presence is selected. The entity app generates and displays a QR code that contains the offline KYC request. Using resident's smartphone Aadhaar app, the resident scans the QR code, consent of the resident is recorded in Aadhaar app. Since proof of presence is required, a local face match is initiated. The local face match captures the face image, performs a liveness check and matches the captured face against offline KYC photo. Finally, digitally signed and encrypted offline KYC information is shared with the entity application through a callback URL specified in the request. Please note that the Aadhaar number of the resident was not required anywhere in the process.
So you get the drift. I mean, the idea is that this can work not only when both the apps are on the same device, it also works when they are on different devices. Let's play the same version without the proof of presence and followed by actually the KYC content history video. Let's play those two in order, please.
During offline KYC using a QR code with no proof of presence. The process is initiated on the entity app on the operator device where the resident name is entered and proof of presence is set to no. The entity app generates and displays a QR code that contains the offline KYC request. Using resident's smartphone Aadhaar app, the resident scans the QR code and consent of the resident is recorded in Aadhaar app. Digitally signed and encrypted offline KYC information is shared with the entity application through a callback URL specified in the request. Please note that the Aadhaar number of the resident was not required anywhere in the process.
Offline KYC consent history. The resident has the ability to review their own offline KYC consent history stored locally on their device. Open the Aadhaar app and click on Consent KYC Share History. The face icon indicates where proof of presence was part of the offline KYC request.
So the important thing is locally the resident is able to keep their own the consent history of all the consent that they have provided. So that's one of the key things, because consent being one of the core parts of it. So changing gears a little bit, we're going to talk about a slightly different use case, though many of the components of that use case are actually quite similar. So one of the things that Aadhaar has many AUAs today, right? And we said that there are over 8 crore authentications that happen today. But we want to actually expand the AUAs, the ability to leverage this local face authentication, which Aadhaar is launching. Now, why would this be important? This is critical to expand the reach of Aadhaar authentication. So, for example, why would one want to do it? Sometimes it could be an exception process when fingerprint authentication fails. It could also be a situation where lots of places you have a limited number of endpoint or fingerprint devices, and you want to actually do some local face matching even when I don't have an endpoint device. And of course, the third kind of situation could be when the network fails, because it's a purely local authentication. And what is it actually doing when you do local face match? The live image of the resident is matched with the photograph in the AUA signed document, which leverages local face matching. And anyone can actually use it. You really don't need any phone or device. The AUA, of course, needs to have a photograph of yours, which may be through a prior KYC or some other means. And what happens is, of course, there is only one device here, which is the operator's device. And the operator's device basically runs and calls the local face matching. The control is shifted to the local face matching. And based on the result of the local face matching, you can understand the proof of presence of that resident at a given place. Let's play a video. Let's play a video showing what happens here.
Local face match capability for Aadhaar AUAs. This use case is performed completely on the operator's device. The resident does not need any device for this verification. It is assumed the AUA has obtained the resident photo through eKYC in the past or some other means. The entity app has a list of residents who can be verified on this device mapped to an entity ID. The local face match captures the face image, performs a liveness check, and matches the captured face against the AUA signed photograph using UIDAI Face RD app. Resident proof of presence process is completed upon successful local face match.
So think about that. I think this is some way that we can actually significantly expand the usage of Aadhaar, even by existing AUAs in places where maybe they don't have devices, or you can use it as an inclusion thing where fingerprint authentication fails, or even scenarios where network kind of scenarios. So therefore, that's actually a whole new set of ways by which Aadhaar authentication can be expanded. And finally, we'll move to a fourth kind of use case where this same set of technologies is actually used in an access control kind of use case. And the whole point of an access kind of control use case could be secure entry to an airport, to a railway station, to a stadium, to an office, by combining basically three concepts: the offline KYC, which we've talked about before, the event details, right? I'm going to go and watch this cricket match, the event details, and of course, a local face match, which happens on an access control device. And the interesting thing is, who can use it? Any resident having an Aadhaar and a booking app for whatever service, for whatever event that they want to. So what happens here? Two things happen. Firstly, the KYC sharing happens. The KYC sharing is just like what we talked in the first use case. So it's through a deep linking, because both the booking app and the Aadhaar app are on the same device. And then, but once this KYC happens, what the entity app would do in this particular case is they will generate a QR code. And the QR code actually contains a link to the event details, as well as an encrypted version of the shared offline KYC. So that's really the combination. You're linking the event to the person, that this person is attending this event. And then when you come at the access entry point, the thing is that you read this QR code, which is the gate pass to check into this event. Where as soon as you do that, you'll be triggering a local face auth. And on success of the local face auth, entry can be granted. So we'll watch this through a set of two videos. The first video is something which happens, which is the registering for the event. This happens not at the location. It happens at your home, or happens at some point before the event takes place. And the second part is that what you do when you hit the access control gate, and how this works, how this could work. So can we play the video, please?
Offline KYC for event registration. A resident can use Aadhaar offline KYC to register for an event and generate a QR code-based gate pass for secure entry. The resident needs to install the Aadhaar app and the event booking application on their own smartphone. Aadhaar offline KYC is initiated by the resident himself using the event booking app. The resident enters his or her name. Now, control shifts to the Aadhaar app through deep linking. The consent of the resident is recorded in Aadhaar app. Digitally signed and encrypted offline KYC information is shared with the book application. A QR code gate pass is generated by the booking application, which links the offline KYC photo with event details. Access control through local face match. A resident can get secure entry into the cricket stadium using the QR code gate pass generated at the time of event registration. The QR code gate pass on the resident's booking app is scanned, and a local face match on the access control device is initiated. Local face match on an access control device is used in this process. The local face match captures the face image, performs a liveness check, and matches the captured face against offline KYC photograph. Check-in and entry is allowed if the local face match is successful and event details are validated. Aadhaar-based event registration and secure check-in is achieved without sharing the Aadhaar number of the resident.
So finally, I think these are all ideas that we are working on POC. Actually, but many of these concepts, both offline KYC, Aadhaar, and face match, are all things that Aadhaar has had for a while. Aadhaar is going to put out a document outlining this initiative, and there will be a request for comments, and it will be on the UID website. And to comment on this initiative, to get feedback as to what can be changed to make it more useful, or any concern that may be there for this initiative, and as also to sign up, a very limited sign up for early access to these capabilities, so that to launch at the time of the launch. We have an email address, and we would request that anybody who wants to be part of these initiatives can communicate with us, both comments as well as ability to be part of this. I really think that these things can change the quantum in which people use Aadhaar in their lives, and it is done in a manner while respecting the three principles, right, of simplicity, privacy, and security. So that's all, and I'm open for some questions. Yeah, can someone help to see? I'm not able to see who has questions. Yeah. Yes.
You're telling a production date of 31st December. When is the pre-prod expected? Is it already there in pre-prod, or?
So it is not already there in pre-prod, but I think that we will rapidly bring it to pre-prod, because all the individual components of these are actually kind of there, putting it together and getting out. We will announce a pre-prod date in our document. Yes.
Will this work on specific phones or be capable on all phones?
No, the intent is to make this work on all phones. Yes, so this has nothing to do with specific phones. The intent is to work on all phones. Yes. The one thing specifically, as far as which may be a little later, maybe this local face match on iOS, Android, all Android phones certainly will work, and the other part probably will work on everything. Yes.
Hello. I'm Avni Zingade, and I'm from Tata Capital. So the question is that will the local face match be extended to eKYC authentication?
No. So as face as a modality is something that that UIDAI is kind of at a pilot stage today. So whether that is a separate talk with online authentication being available as face is something which is already in progress, and it is at a pilot stage. And how that will get extended to other AUAs is something that's a process that is going on. This is a parallel track, because this is not a online process, right? Because you are actually only matching the credential against the person who are standing in front of there. It is not actually matching the it is not going back to UIDAI. So this is an offline. That's the key concept of offline being there.
Thank you.
Hi. I just wanted to know, is AO KUA license required to use the Aadhaar or offline-based KYC for the entities?
No. Yeah. So the point is that it is not required to be an AUA or KUA license for this. Having said that, in the initial process, it will be a controlled rollout. So there will be specific people, so you'll have to sign up with us to actually do this. And after that, we'll see how that goes. But there is not a requirement of an AUA, KUA license for this offline requirements. Now, the use case 3 was specifically for AUAs, if you noted that.
So, sir, Apoor Prasad from HDFC Bank. This yes. Side. Yeah. So you mentioned that the consent will be locally recorded in the Aadhaar app.
Yes.
What happens if I move to a new phone, uninstall the app? Will the consent be there, or it will be erased?
No, it will be. In the end, the consent is local, right? So therefore, if you're talking about your own thing, you are controlling the consent. Now, of course, because the person has done it from their Aadhaar, and the person has done using proof of presence, if you are the entity, of course, the response that comes from there could be treated as the consent as far as you are concerned if you are a business, right? But as far as the resident is concerned, it is local. It is important that we don't want to record that, right? So that is controlled, that is owned by the owner itself. But if you have a good suggestion on that, we are willing to hear.
Hi, sir. Prabhu here. Your left side.
Yes.
Yeah. So do we have any plan on future phone users? So how they can use for offline verification?
So explicitly, this thing is not a feature phone based thing. So therefore, this particular use case is very much smartphone focused, except for use case 3, which does not require any phone at all, as far as the resident is concerned. One of the things that feature phone users, if there are family members where certain people have the smartphone, other people have the feature phones, you could use it. And as you know, in Aadhaar, up to 5 profiles can actually be stored on those. And so this kind of thing could be used using that scheme by people who don't have a smartphone. But to use, especially the use cases 1, the first, the second, and the fourth use case, you do need a smartphone. Having said that, Aadhaar knows very well that we do want to expand and come up with use cases that can be done in feature phones. So we look forward to comments about how such a thing could be useful, or how such a variation on such a thing could be made to work on a feature phone.
Sure, sir. Thank you.
Hi, sir. Sir, yeah, straight. Devesh here. So since this is authentication is happening by UIDAI, is there a possibility where the face match which is happening, the liveness thing, will be considered as a verification part and can be considered as a full KYC? Is there any talks going on with the regulator, RBI, on this?
So I don't think that I can answer that question right now as far as what is happening here is just an offline KYC verification. It is certainly a proof of presence that Aadhaar is saying that this person is actually present here. Whether that's certainly part of the that's what is happening as far as this is concerned. What other agencies are using or other things, these are discussions which need to happen. It's still an early stage. I think we want to put the concept out. We want to see whether people think that this is something useful. I mean, let me ask a question. The things that we talked about today, can I get a show of hands to see, is this something that will move Aadhaar usage forward? I mean, yeah. So I see a very large number of hands. So that's really good to hear. And so therefore, we will work with people. We will do the consultations. And we will kind of figure out how to make it work. It's a good question we raise, and we will clarify that point.
Sure. Thank you, sir.
Hello, sir.
Yes.
As mentioned that the local face match would work. So I would know that in case the biometric fails, what would be the chances of success for local face match in such situations?
So, I mean, let me answer at the risk of boring some people. Let me answer the question a little technically. One of the interesting kind of demographics where fingerprint failures are a little bit higher are actually people who are older, right? As more senior citizens, as you move to above 60, 70, and things like that. It's very interesting that face authentication is a contraindicator, actually works exceptionally well in that demographic. So therefore, I think it is, in the end, we think that there is not a strong correlation between having poor fingerprints and your face dramatically changing. So therefore, we believe that this is actually going to be extremely, the chances are extremely high, but I will let the let's see. We are rolling it out, and we'll find out what we learn.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, please.
So would want to applaud Aadhaar for the beautiful initiatives that it's taking. 2 questions I have. First is, would we be able to operate in the areas where network is very weak? Because we operate in some of the very rural parts of the country. So what would be the network requirement for these features to operate?
Yeah, so in reality, because when you're talking about deep linking between 2 apps, now the question is, the app itself may be forcing some connectivity that I can't control. But the deep linking process itself does not require any connectivity, right? And the face auth is also completely local, so it is not something that needs anything else other than any connectivity in that sense. But having said that, most things when the connectivity is really bad, things that you think work really well, may not work. So you may have to design carefully. And we may also have certain blind spots where we thought that maybe connectivity was not needed, but it's really needed. But having said that, nothing in the principle of this requires connectivity.
Second, sir, my question was on the fourth use case that you used, where the Aadhaar can be used as a instrument to get entry into a movie ticket or a stadium. So there, I, as an Aadhaar holder, would I be able to control the information that should be shared with that app? Because I would not be comfortable sharing my address with the Book My Shows or any other apps.
Yeah. In fact, the minimum information for most of those kinds of things, the only information that we recommend showing is actually the name and the photograph. That's all. Nothing else other than that is needed, because obviously the photograph is needed because that is what is required for the local face match. The name is the entity by which you're defining as the person who is seeking entry into the event.
So, thank you, sir.
So, for those who are staying at a rental place, Aadhaar is, to put address entries in the rental, it is a very cumbersome process because you have to visit the collector, you have to take the owner's permission, and then, there is a possibility they are taking money, and then you register it at Aadhaar. So can you simplify the process where people do not have permanent address?
So yeah, I think as part of, let me just answer it, that today's solutions are not solving that problem. But having said that, this is certainly improving, this capability is certainly part of the Aadhaar 2.0 sandbox. And hopefully in the next few months, we will be coming up with some clever ways to do this, which simplifies this and makes it much more digital.
Hello.
Yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to understand when the offline eKYC is being shared, as the gentleman already asked a question that the entire information should not be shared, where I may not be able to or would not like to share my date of birth or full address. But is it possible that when you send the request, that time itself, customer can decide what information I want to share as a part of this offline thing? Or even the entity can say that I want this much information, and then based on that, the customer can decide whether I should give a consent, so that the control is still with the resident about what should be shared, what should not be shared, and the entity can also decide whether they really need the entire data or a part of data.
Yeah, so indeed what you're saying, it's the second method is the method that we are talking about. The entity will say that I need XYZ information. Now the consent comes to you. Right? Supposing if somebody is saying for entrance to a stadium, I need your date of birth or I need your address, you may choose not to give the consent, right? And so therefore, and there will be typical reasonable consents that are there. So in the end, it is in the hand. That is why we are saying granular consent capability will be there with the resident. And that is the intent, that clearly for certain kinds of applications, you don't need to share all your KYC information, and you should share only the minimal amount required to achieve that process.
Good evening, sir. This is Karthikeyan. Is there any plan or methodology adopted by UIDAI for setting the offline KYC when there is no concern from the customers, citizens?
No, UIDAI as a fundamentally, we will not share the consent without the consent of the citizen. I think that is, I don't think we have any such plan, and so therefore that is not something that I think that we will consider.
Sir, this is for India. What are we doing for Bharat? The segment beyond self-service for which Aadhaar is made. The AEPS-enabled mass market, where the gentleman just spoke about. So how does the self-service conducive segment and beyond that, the marginalized, subsidized segment use this?
Yeah, no. So I think that at one level you are right, but I would say that use case 3, when you look at it very specifically, it is actually the main use is to do two things. One is to ensure that you can do Aadhaar verification at various places where you could not do it before because the device was not there or because where the network was not there. And you do it for people for whom authentication was failing. That is also something which is there. So therefore, in the end, when we are talking about Aadhaar being used at a larger scale, it is our AUAs and it is through the various schemes that we are using Aadhaar that, that we will reach out to those kinds of people. But the two differences is that the scale, the number of people who can be reached out is increased even in that area. Having said that, you know, if someone has really good ideas of how to expand Aadhaar usage to Bharat, right? I think this is one of the core goals why we are here in UIDAI. So we will be most welcome to hear any suggestions.
Ladies and gentlemen, in the interest of time, we'll take the last question. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, good evening, sir. Just wanted to check if you see a use case for marrying the e-rupee initiative that has been launched with the particular use case that you just presented, in order to make sure that the benefits are getting transferred to the right people. And I feel that if we are able to solve for the feature phone journey of Aadhaar authentication, the way you have just described it, I feel it would be fairly powerful.
So, thank you, ma'am, for your comments. I don't think we have thought seriously about some of these things, but we will. I think both good points that you have raised. Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, sir.
Which one, sir? Excuse me?
I'm so sorry. We are completely run out of time.
One last. Sir,
okay.
I'm Major Karthik.
Okay. Yeah.
This is regarding the consent revoking. For example, akin to where we have in Android apps, we remove the permissions, even though we grant access while installing. Is there anything akin to that in offline authentication?
So the purpose of consent is for a single sharing, right?
Okay.
So once you share the data, I mean, the data has been shared, right? Okay. So revoking the consent, and it is for a particular app, for a particular reason,
yes,
you have shared it.
Yes,
so
sir.
now the data has already gone there. If I revoke the consent, I can't delete it from the place where it's gone, right? So, but let's think about it. If you have interesting ideas, I'm open to hearing all those kinds of things as well.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Dr. Vivek, I must thank you for your patience and for answering all those questions there. And thank you indeed, dear audience members, for your valuable questions. Can we have a huge round of applause one more time? I'm sure this workshop was absolutely informative, and I think the next time we'll do the registrations, we might as well use Aadhaar to make it super seamless for all of our members of the audience. Thank you once again for joining us this evening.
So that would be great. Thank you.
Absolutely, sir. Well, on that note, it gets even more interesting. You know, we gather insights from our speakers, and then we gather even more from all our members of the audience, thanks to your questions. Well, that being said, as we call it a wrap to this set of this segment of about the sessions wherein we had our speakers, let me inform you that the next session that will take place is directly at 6:30 p.m. At 6:30 p.m., we'll be having none other than Mr. Devendra Fadnavis joining us, and we'll have a conversation steered by Mr. Kunal Shah. So that'll take place exactly at 6:30 p.m. over here. That being said, once again, I'd like to remind all our members of the audience, please do wear your badges at all the times, and this is strictly for the security purpose. And in the meantime, in case if you'd like to take a little break, I'd like to also request you to explore the expo area, take a look at the latest initiatives put up by our partner booths. But please do come back and please grab your seats at least by 6:25, because 6:30 p.m. we have another very, very important conversation coming your way. So please do take care of your belongings and please do wear your badges. See you all at 6:30 p.m. Thank you.